Hi, this is Patty Walker, your local and community dietitian. Welcome you back to another episode of Nutritional Wisdoms. Today's episode is going to be on adding years to your life and life to your years. When I transitioned from a hospital setting to private practice, I also added a more holistic view to how diseases occur. So what that means is I now try to help my clients identify the root cause of their disease, which in all honesty can help them either prevent further continuation of the disease or even reverse diseases. So what I mean by that, I'll give you an example as I'm a diabetes educator. When I had been seeing clients in the past, I would look at their diet, I would look at their activity level, I would look at their medication list, send recommendations to the physician, and they would get a good solid base of information on what they could do to help improve their blood sugars. But diabetes is far more complicated than just diet, activity, and medication. So some of the underlying causes of diabetes, and this is type 2 diabetes, not type 1, so I do want to just specify that. The underlying cause of type 2 diabetes is lifestyle. So it could be the diet, it could be lack of activity, it could be their stress level, it could be how much sleep they're getting. Another example could be what the foods they've been eating, how it affects the gut microbiome, or do they have nutritional deficiencies. So I've actually added micronutrient testing and food sensitivity testing to my practice to actually help the clients get to the root cause of why their condition exists, and if we could fix the root cause, then we fix the disease. So just know that lifestyle is the primary determinant of chronic disease. And I'm going to give you a good example of that. There was a study done in Europe of over 200,000 people, and they identified 4 lifestyle habits that, when done together, made a difference. So those 4 habits were not smoking, having a diet that was mostly plant-based, still had some animal products, some meat, some butter, those types of things, but it was mostly plant-based. They maintained a normal weight, and they exercise 30 minutes every day. So those 4 habits in combination prevented chronic diseases by 78%, reduced the risk of developing type 2 diabetes by 93%, reduced the risk of having a heart attack by 81%, and reduced the risk of having any type of cancer by 36%. We're seeing lifestyle habits are really, really important if you want to have a good quality life. So the habits you choose today and going forward will affect your longevity and the quality of your life. So, and it's very much supported with epidemiological studies. So what that does is compares different cultures to ours. So there are many studies that will show when natives from other countries come to America, they have a lower disease rate of many of our chronic diseases. But within one generation, that first generation equalizes the same rate of chronic diseases. So just being in America for one generation puts you at the same risk of chronic diseases as the average American. And they also have shown that when we introduce our diet to other countries, the same thing happens. Diseases that they had very low risk of now are accelerating. And you know, the primary reason is that the most of the food that we consume in our country is either processed or high in saturated fat. So we know that there are certain categories of food that are very inflammatory to the body, and those would include sugar, any refined carbohydrate, and I'll get into that a little bit later, what a refined carbohydrate is, but just think it's any grain that's processed and doesn't have all of the grain itself as part of the food. Artificial sweeteners, conventionally raised animal products, so your beef, your cheeses, your milk, they unfortunately have other ingredients in them, including growth hormones and antibiotics, and what the animals are fed is part of the products that are part of the, it's still in the food. So we're consuming that. And alcohol is another inflammatory food. So those are very, very common foods. I mean, over 80% of what the typical American eats is either processed or conventionally raised meats, and that does cause inflammation. So the average life expectancy in America right now is 78 years. The average man will live 76 years, and the average woman 81 years. What's interesting is in Canada, not too far north of us, the average man lives to be age 80 and the average woman lives to be age 84. And the CDC predicts that our life longevity will actually continue to decrease. It has decreased the last couple years, and we still have the access to the best medical health in the world and pharmaceuticals, but our life expectancy is declining. And again, I'm going to challenge you to think that that has to do with the lifestyle and the food that we have available to us. So one other thing that's important is most people that come into my office will say, well, it's genetics. My parents had diabetes, my parents had heart disease, my brother has high blood pressure. Of course it's going to happen to me. And we now know that only 10% of genetics affects your longevity. 90% has to do with lifestyle. And this is very, very important. And I'm going to introduce a topic called the blue zones that will actually reinforce that your lifestyle choices that you make today are going to affect the longevity of and the quality of life that you will be living in the future. So the blue zones are very exciting. Dan Buettner, a researcher in conjunction with National Geographic's, identified 5 pockets of population categories in the world that had the longest living centenarians. Those are people over the age of 100 who still had good quality of life. I mean, these people lived until they died. So those areas are, there's one in the United States, it's Loma, California, and they can expect to live 10 years longer than the average American. This small pocket in Loma, California, and I'll give you a heads up. It's the 7-day Adventists, so it's that category of population there. The second one is Sardinia, Italy. They have the longest living men. Okinawa, Japan has the longest living women. Ikaria, Greece. It's actually nicknamed the island that begets to die because 1 in 3 of their residents lives to be over 90 years of age. Just to give you a heads up, 1 in 5,000 Americans can actually make it to the 100-year mark. So 1 in 3 living to be over 90 with a good quality of life really does speak that they must be doing something right. And the last one is Nicoya, Costa Rica. So it's an island off of Costa Rica that they very much live native-based plant foods, and they have a good sense of purpose and a lot of sunshine, and they're the 5th pocket. So what I'd like to do is really review each of those categories a little bit, or each of those pockets a little bit further, and explain, and perhaps we could figure out what the commonalities of these 5 areas are. So the first one we're going to talk about is Loma Linda, California. So Loma Linda, California, as I'd mentioned before, the life expectancy is on average 10 years longer than the average American. So men live to be about 87 years of age, and women live to be, on the average, 89 years of age. And what was interesting, this morning I saw a commercial on investing for your future, and they actually interviewed residents from Loma Linda, California, saying, you're going to live longer than all other Americans in the country, so what is your investment strategies so that you have money to live longer? So I thought that was really interesting that insurance companies have actually identified Loma Linda and are saying we need to invest a little bit more, and so that was just a side note there. So they do live longer. So what do they eat? They're mostly a plant-based diet. They do have some animal protein, but they're mostly vegetarian. They usually abstain from alcohol, And they do have a lot of nuts and local produce. So almonds are obviously grown in California, so I assume they eat a lot of almonds in addition to a plant-based diet. How they eat is also unique. They have their largest meal at breakfast, their medium meal at lunch, and their smallest meal at supper. So some of you have heard the term eat like a king at breakfast, a queen at lunch, and a pauper at supper, and they do that. And studies have shown that that works with your natural energy rhythm. So when you have the food available to burn for energy when your energy needs are highest, you maintain a better weight. And so they do that. They are the Seventh-day Adventists, so it's a Methodist group. So they have a strong sense of spirituality, and they celebrate the Sabbath on Saturday, which means that they don't work on Saturday. It's a day devoted to church, to family, to outdoor activities, to their community. They may volunteer that day, so they take a break from all of the stressors in life on that day, and that's a really, really important aspect of longevity. So, and they volunteer. So, when you give of yourself to others without expectations in return, that increases your happiness level and decreases your stress level. So those are things about the Loma Linda, California group. The next group is Sardinia, Italy. And as I've mentioned before, that is where the oldest living men live. So the first thing I want you to do is look at the picture of these men. They are vibrant, they're healthy, they're youthful, and as a reminder, these are the men that live the longest. So what's their secret? Well, first, they have 10 times more centenarians in Sardinia, Italy than in the United States. They hunt, they fish, they harvest their food. They're mostly a vegetarian diet, but they do enjoy grass-fed cheeses. They raise their goats, they shepherd. So they have animal products maybe once a week and on special occasions, but it's not a major part of their diet. And they certainly drink wine. They make their wine and they drink their wine and they enjoy their wine. They put their family first. They celebrate the wisdom of elders. That's another super, super important thing about getting old with a good quality of life, because you want to have a purpose in life. And they really respect and value the sage wisdom of their elders, and that's a lesson we could learn in our country. They walk on an average 5 miles a day. They don't wake up saying, oh, I have to get on the treadmill for a half hour. Activity is just a natural part of their lifestyle. And they laugh a lot. They really, really have stress reducing, good belly laughs. So that's Sardinia, Italy. The next one is Okinawa, Japan. So again, look at the women in the picture. She's flexible, she has purpose, she's peaceful. So their diet is also mostly vegetarian. They do incorporate tofu. So the tofu in Japan is very different than the tofu here. It's organic, it's not genetically modified. They do use fermented soy in many dishes. Their miso, their tempeh. Those are very, very unique to Japan, but in small amounts. They just don't add soy to everything and modify it and process it and say it's the same soy that we have in our country. So the soy in Japan is very different than the soy that we have available to us, unless you do get the organic tofu in the blocks, which certainly is available, and I would encourage that. And they eat fish. Obviously, they're an island country, so they do eat fish. But what they don't have is a lot of sugar, a lot of dairy, and a lot of other animal proteins. So their protein sources are pretty much tofu and their soy. They have a couple very unique habits. One of them is eating to their 80% full. If you don't overeat, you're less apt to be overweight. So they're very conscious of their hunger levels, and when they're about 80% full, they have a saying called Hari Hachibu, which means I am done. So that is something unique to their culture. In addition to, they have a strong sense of family and friends. So when they're about 2 years of age, they actually are assigned a moi. So it's M-O-A-I. I might be mispronouncing it, but it is a buddy that you are asked to communicate with and be best friends with for your entire life. So every single day you talk to your moi. So you have someone that has your back, that is so super supportive, and that is a very unique part of their culture. And they also have a very, very strong sense of purpose. They garden, they walk, they get a lot of vitamin D. We're going to talk about vitamin D, I think, with the Costa Rica group also. But realize that vitamin D is mislabeled. Vitamin D, in my opinion, should not be a vitamin. Because vitamins are something that we don't produce ourselves and we need to get from our food. And we do produce vitamin D. We get it from sunshine. So vitamin D is essential in many, many hormones that we synthesize in our body, in addition to many disease preventions. And so getting adequate vitamin D through sunshine is very important, and it's the best way of getting it. So they do get a lot of vitamin D. So that's Okinawa, Japan. The next blue zone that we're going to talk about is Ikaria, Greece. And again, this is the island that forgets to die. 1 in 3 are over the age of 90. That is just unheard of in our country. And I'm saying over the age of 90 with low medical costs and a good quality of life. They almost are entirely free of dementia. That again is very unique. They do drink wine, and they have a strong, very Mediterranean-based diet, which means lots of fruits, lots of vegetables, all locally, seasonal, whole grains. They do have goats, so they will have goat milk and goat cheese, and fish, but minimal red meat, minimal salt, minimal processed foods. They're very active. Their lifestyle is very active. They garden a lot. And this population naps, and so they're showing the priority of sleep and the importance of sleep. And they obviously prioritize their friends and family. And the last group that we're going to discuss is the Costa Rican group, that island Nicoya. They have a diet of traditional corn and beans. So if I had mentioned that to most of my clients with diabetes, they're like, oh no, I can't eat corn and beans, or the keto diet, which is very popular in our country. Oh no, corn and beans are bad. They have carbohydrates. This population, their diet is 90-95% carbohydrates from natural, unprocessed foods. They like the people from Loma, the Seventh-day Adventists, they have their smallest meal at supper. They do have a lot of calcium in their water. They have very uniquely hard water, which is a source of calcium for them. They also have lots of vitamin D. They're outside doing their chores. They have a strong sense of purpose, and again, they're also family motivated and socialize with their neighbors. So those are the 5 pockets of the world called the blue zones. And what they really show is that there are common denominators between them. And I don't know if you've noticed what those common denominators are, but the first was activity. And the activity was part of their natural lifestyle. It wasn't, I have to go on the treadmill for that half hour. And I'll tell you, I try to exercise 30 minutes to an hour a day. So it may be the last few days I've been on the treadmill doing 3 miles. So that's between, 5,000, 6,000 steps. Yet my pedometer still does not reach 10,000 steps. In these blue zone areas, they all average over 10,000 steps a day. So just doing your activity, it's great, and we're going to talk about activity, but realize that parking further away, using the stairs, incorporating activity on a regular basis helps us maintain muscle strength, helps us maintain flexibility and balance. So really, really considering having activity as part of your regular routine is important. The next was they had a really good outlook on life. They had a sense of purpose. They practice stress management. Their diets, I think you would remember that most of them were mostly plant-based diets. Their protein sources came from tofu, nuts, and beans. They did have some fish, minimal red meat, but they didn't have a lot of processed foods. They almost had no processed foods, very little dairy unless it was homegrown and that they made themselves. They didn't overeat, and they did have wine in moderation. But one of the important ones was their social connections. They were very strong, family-oriented. They had supported friends and communities. They ate in groups. They honored their elders, and they all had a sense of purpose. So those were the 9 commonalities of the Blue Zones. So after I studied the Blue Zones, I said, all right, so how can we adopt those habits, and what can we do here in our community and in our country to maybe improve the quality of life, reverse chronic diseases in a simple fashion. So now here's my challenge to you. There's such a thing called the Blue Zone projects, and these are communities around the globe that adopt the lifestyles of the people that live in the Blue Zones. So I think it would be very, very exciting if the Lakes Region area wanted to become a Blue Zone project or community. But in order to do so, it requires a lot of help and support. So if it's something that you're interested in, I really, really welcome you to contact me to see if we can start setting up a committee and get things going. So finally, what I'd like to do is offer you a Blue Zone friendly recipe. This is plant-based, very delicious, and very simple to do. It is called Easy Black Bean Rice and Vegetables. And let's go through the recipe. All right, for the ingredients, you'll need a 15-ounce can of black beans, drained and rinsed. You'll need some chili powder. You need cumin, turmeric, some salt. I really do prefer the Himalayan or the sea salt because it has a little bit of extra minerals. Some black pepper, olive oil, an onion, a red pepper, vegetable broth, a cup of quick cooking brown rice, not enriched rice. Remember, we're talking whole grains, so really brown rice, and 3 cups of baby spinach. And what do you do with all that wonderful ingredients? You'll need 2 pans. So the first thing you do is you put the drained beans into a small saucepan and cover with water. Doesn't matter the amount of water, you just want to cover it with water, bring it to a boil, and then reduce to simmer. You're going to add a tablespoon of chili powder, a teaspoon of cumin, a teaspoon of turmeric, and the black pepper. Stir it up, simmer it for 20 minutes, and at the very end, add the salt. So after the 20 minutes is done, you'll add that salt. Meanwhile, while that's simmering, in a larger pan, you want to heat the oil. You want to add the onions and peppers and saute them until they're tender, and then add the vegetable broth and bring it to a boil. When it's boiling, you'll add the rice, cover, reduce to simmer, and just cook it till the rice is done. That's usually around 20 minutes, but do check on the package instructions because the one you get may vary. It's okay if you need to add a little bit more broth or a little bit, adjusting the cooking time. Finally, when the rice is done, you add the spinach, put the cover back on, and just let the spinach steam in the pot for about 5 minutes. And actually, this is the final ingredient. Now, that wonderful black bean mixture in the other pot, get a slotted spoon and just take it out. So that's why it didn't matter how much water you put in, because you're not adding the water to the rice at this point. With a slotted spoon, you add the beans to the rice and vegetable mixture, add the remaining chili powder and cumin, which is a teaspoon of chili powder and a half a teaspoon of cumin, fold, and enjoy. If you love cilantro or lime, you can use cilantro and lime wedges as a garnish. But it is a wonderful recipe. Takes about 20 minutes to cook. I use it as an entree, and I also use it as a filling for stuffed peppers. So it really goes for 2 or 3 meals. It says it serves 4. I would say it serves 6. But you could have that, a nice side salad, and some fresh cornbread, and that would be a fabulous meal this time of year. So I really do hope that you try the recipe out and enjoy it. And that's the show today. I thank you for watching, and I wish you health and longevity. Thank you.